So I would put some money on the fact that you're probably struggling with a microphone buying decision for your podcast, especially if you're just starting up. And if you're having those troubles, especially with all of these popular mics out there, what's the difference between condenser and dynamic? I don't know what to choose. Well, I'll tell you what, after watching this video, you're going to be able to make that buying decision. So let's go. What's up, you amazing humans? Welcome back to the channel. And I tell you what, you get more beautiful each and every time I see you. And if you are new here, this is a place where I help entrepreneurs with their creative endeavors, helping you build, scale, and elevate so that you can do the things that matter. And what matters today? Microphones. So let's go over a few ground rules here. We're going to keep things as basic as possible. I do want to give you some insight on the differences between these microphones, not just like the connections and things, but the fact that we are talking about a condenser mic versus a dynamic mic. Right now, I am talking on a condenser mic, the Blue Yeti, which is a very popular mic. I see a lot of YouTubers and podcasters out there. This was actually my first microphone. I looked back at my Amazon purchase history and I purchased this in May of 2011 and it's still kicking. So if that just kind of gives you a little bit of insight. Both of these microphones are able to be plugged in via USB and they are in my computer right now, but I am going to allow you to hear the condenser mic and then we'll switch over to the dynamic mic. But let's actually talk about the condenser mic for a second and just keep it basic. And also some ground rules too, focusing on vocals only. And we're talking about podcasting. Any questions or comments, you leave those below and I will get back to you as soon as possible. Let's get into some very basic, let's say, anatomy and phys here with the microphone itself. So with a condenser, the way that it's set up and keeping it very basic is that there's thin plates at the top. So like when I'm talking and moving air and those plates are very thin, it's pushing that air in. Electrical impulses or electricity is in between those plates and then pushing that down to essentially get your output. So those plates are very thin and very sensitive, and that leads me into one of the advantages of a condenser mic is that what it will do is that I can actually sit back from it a little bit and it's picking up my voice. So I don't actually have to be like on top of it. And another thing too is that we're talking about a cardioid pattern. So the basics here is just think about if you've ever seen looking at polar patterns of microphones, both of these are cardioid, although the Blue Yeti has the ability to do different types of directions. But essentially, like if I move over here or I move over here, especially with a condenser mic, what it's doing is it's picking up my voice around here, because in a podcast, you may find yourself moving around a little bit. And then what it's actually trying to do is remove or filter that signal here, because that's not where I am. Although the Blue Yeti has the capability of switching up the polar pattern. And also too, with a condenser mic, it sounds a little bit more natural and you'll hear the differences, but it actually has a more natural sound. But that sensitivity, the issue with it is that when I first started podcasting was that my kids were much younger and I was doing a podcast while they were home and it was picking up all of that noise. They're very sensitive. And so my recommendation is that if you do choose a condenser mic, definitely think about soundproofing and your environment. So if it's going to be like take a lot for you to soundproof or getting ambient noise, environmental noise, people at home while you're podcasting, this may not necessarily be a great way to do it. Although I will say having this windscreen on the Blue Yeti helps. I have this pop filter in front because that helps with like plosives, and having this windscreen, which I didn't have at the time. So if I take this off, and you may or may not be able to hear it bouncing a little bit more. I also have a server over there that's always running. I can barely hear it in my headphones, but you might be able to hear it in the microphone. It's very sensitive, and I have stuff bouncing off. Like I have nothing in front of me right now as far as soundproofing is concerned. So any of that noise is gonna hit in front of me and come right back at me. I would recommend, especially with a condenser mic, if you have like moving blankets or something thick that you can hang up on a frame or a pole or something to help with that bounce, because essentially what happens is if you put that soundproofing in front of you, what it will do is as your voice projects like over the mic, it will hit something like this. But keep in mind, don't necessarily put it flush against a wall or an object, bring it back a few inches so that as the sound passes through this and tries to come back through, it'll get filtered more that way. Now, one of the things that I want to explain as far as like price point here, Amazon's giving us some grief about listing prices because pricing always changes on Amazon. So they're kind of giving some creators a little bit of guff about that. Let's just hypothetically say a king size Snickers bar or Kit Kat, let's say that's $1. So this price point for the Blue Yeti comes in at about 120 king size Snickers or Kit Kats, whatever you prefer. And if you don't like chocolate, maybe donuts, whatever. It's on the higher end, I think, of a lot of people's budgets, and you can certainly get condenser mics that are cheaper. However, like I said, I purchased this in 2011 and it's held up quite well, but condenser mics are known for not only just their sensitivity and picking up more background noise, maybe even some hiss, and they're also not necessarily as durable because of those thin plates. So they sometimes don't hold up. So if you're traveling around, moving around a lot, that may be a decision that you have to make of like, okay, well, I have to pack this thing up and take it on the road and travel with it. It might not be the best, and especially in noisy environments or where you have very little to no control of your environment for the sound. It's a great mic. I see a lot of people making that decision. You have to think about your future needs because this plugs in directly into the computer and that's about it. Whereas the ATR 2100 over here, well, let's actually get into that. You can hear that difference and we can kind of talk about that microphone. Okay, so we are on the ATR 2100 here. This is a dynamic microphone. And simply the anatomy here and physiology is that instead of those two very thin plates that are sensitive, this actually also has a thin plate, the diaphragm, but then there's a coil of wire and a magnet. As my voice hits that, it produces that sound. A couple of things, and I know it's very basic. I just don't want to get too technical here, but what I will say is that I have to be a little bit, well, actually quite close to the microphones, because if I kind of pull back here, you can tell that it's echoey and it's not picking up. So I have to be very close to that, which that can be a disadvantage for some of you, but the advantage is that there's a lot of background noise rejection. So even though same cardioid pattern, it rejects a lot of that noise. And here, let's do a little bit of a test. We'll take the windscreen off like I did on this one, see if we can hear the server, and there's actually another fan going too. And there's actually some kids outside too, so I don't know if that got picked up or not. And I'm going to keep everything raw in post. I'm not going to be editing this because I want you to hear it straight out of mic. And speaking of straight out of mic, with dynamic versus condenser, because condenser, it's a little bit brighter, it's a little bit more natural, where the dynamic microphone has low mids and bass sound. And for someone like myself that has a lot of bass in my voice, it can get a little muddier, so a little bit thicker. And typically in post, I have to raise that up a little bit. I've got to tweak that in the EQ so that I don't sound as muddy. But like I said, I'm not editing this at all. Just going to have you hear it as it is straight out of mic. But that may be problematic for some of you in that if your podcast, you don't want to sound like a broadcaster or newscaster or just that radio voice. Like if you want something a little bit more natural, the condenser may be the way if you can control your environment. However, for me, I'm on the road. These microphones are very durable. And so I travel with these microphones a lot. I don't know. I can't tell you how many places I've taken this mic. I also record outside, very busy environments. Oftentimes like in conference rooms where there's a lot of people like outside the doors or even inside, and it does reject a lot of the noise, not everything, but also working with multiple hosts in the same room, it really helps in the post-production. But yeah, if you're not really about that broadcasting voice, like you're in the news studio, so hey, we've got Chuck Stenson up on our sky deck. He's going to be bringing in the weather. So Chuck, up to you. What's happening up there? Oh, wait. Sounds like Chuck just got knocked out by a baseball-sized hail. All right. Well, anyway, good luck, Chuck. Back to me in the studio. If you really don't want that radio voice, and that's not necessarily your style, you may want to think about that. But I will take that over the background noise and having that rejected as much as possible. Also, too, with the ATR 2100, this is a microphone that not only for the price point, this comes in at around 60 Snickers bars or Kit Kat bars. So compared to that, it's about half the price. And condenser mics are generally more expensive, and you can get condenser mics that are shaped like this microphone, very traditional microphone. But yes, this comes in at about half of the Snickers bars. And also, too, it has the advantage of being plugged in via XLR. So there's another connection here. When you get to a point where you don't want to necessarily record and rely on your computer, or you want to be on the road, you can use a handheld recorder. I always recommend using a handheld recorder, but that's like as you grow in your podcasting space, as you grow and your budget grows, that's what I would recommend. So this has the ability to just plug and play right into a computer if that's what you need to do. And then if you need to expand that and say like, okay, well, I'm beyond that, we have the handheld recorder, and get that audio dialed in there and then bring those files in later in post-production. But the fact that you can upgrade with this microphone, this could be the one and only microphone that you purchase. So for 60 Snickers bars, Kit Kats, this could be the last microphone that you ever need. And I know that I sound a bit biased because I do still use that condenser mic. The Blue Yeti is a great choice. I just am oftentimes in environments where I cannot control that environment, and this dynamic microphone is literally like my go-to. I will even put link below a podcast that we did outside. There was a highway next to us, not far, an airport nearby, and we had passersby, and you can still hear some of that. But as far as post-production was concerned, it was very little post-production, and it rejected a lot of noise. It's still, like I said, it was an ambient feel that we were going for it during that show. But you can imagine like being next to that highway, the airport, and some people around that it could have gotten noisy, and it did, but it rejected a lot. Speaking of rejection, I don't want to reject anything from you as far as your questions or your comments below. I know this was very basic. I just wanted to keep it very simple and helping you with your buying decision. I will link everything up below, including the little like windscreens and pop filters and all of that stuff. Hit me up. I'll get back to you as quickly as I can in those comment sections. So as always, let's get out on here and do the things that matter the most to us. You keep doing what you're doing. Keep rocking those faces. I really appreciate your time and attention on this one. And for those that are looking for additional upgrades and handheld stuff, I've got more videos on podcasting, so check those out. And I will check you out on the next one. So thanks so much, and we'll see you right back here.